I'm Ralph McInerny, and this is a course in Kierkegaard and Newman, two enormously important thinkers of the 19th century. This is a course for the International Catholic University. We have, as you know, sequences of courses that are aimed at the MA in philosophy and another in theology. And after the more fundamental or basic courses, we have a number of courses which are auxiliary and elective, and this is one of those, course on Kierkegaard and Newman. And for reasons that will appear as I continue, it can serve as a elective both in the philosophy and in the theology sequence. I should say that personally, it's a particular delight for me to give this course. I was introduced to Kierkegaard when I was a graduate student at the University of Minnesota, and indeed when I look at my copies of Kierkegaard, this is one of his works that I'll be referring to, I open it up and I find that I bought it in January of 1952. So for over a half century I have been a student of Kierkegaard, and to have been introduced to him at the University of Minnesota was a particular boon, because it was there that the first translations from the Danish to the English of Kierkegaard's works began, with David Swenson and with his wife. Minneapolis, Minnesota is a very Scandinavian sort of place, and Swenson, who was a professor of philosophy at the University of Minnesota, just happened upon a Danish edition of the concluding unscientific postscript. As I say, I'll refer to that later. And bought it and took it home and read it, and in the phrase, it changed his life. He devoted himself to making Kierkegaard known in the English-speaking world, and indeed the work that he began was carried on by a number of other people and has reached its crown in more recent years. But these pioneers should be remembered. My own teacher was Paul Homer, who had been a student of Swenson and who went on to become a notable philosopher of religion in his own right. As for Newman, I remember vividly when I was 13 years old finding a biography of Newman in the school library which had the title The Red Hat, and I read it with great avidity and felt introduced, at least imaginatively, to the life of the University of Oxford, with which, of course, Newman was associated. Now, these two men both lived in the 19th century. Newman's dates are 1801 to 1890, so his lifetime almost spanned that entire century, and his dates bracket those of Sorin Kierkegaard, who was born in May 1813 in Copenhagen and died in November of 1855, also in Copenhagen. These two men did not know one another, and as we look back at the 19th century, their names jump out at us. They're commonly recognized as being geniuses whose prowess tend to transcend the usual divisions of, say, philosophical or theological activity. And we're inclined, because of this retrospective view, to think that they were as important to their contemporaries as they have become for us. And while there's some basis for thinking that in the case of Newman, there's almost none for thinking that in the case of Kierkegaard. They were both religious thinkers. And both of them, although they lived in the 19th century, did not consider themselves to be of it. They were very countercultural in their thoughts and in their writings. They were, in different ways, champions of that old-time religion against what they took to be misapprehensions of it, misdescriptions of it, and indeed quite confused understandings of what Christianity is. David Swenson, whom I've mentioned, had this to say about the relationship between Kierkegaard and Newman, and he was writing 75 years ago. He put it this way: Newman was looking for the objectively true church so that he could join it. Whereas Kierkegaard was seeking so to live that those who lived as he did would constitute with him the true church. That's a well-turned phrase, and there's some truth in it, but I think it doesn't tell us sufficiently well about either man. It makes Newman sound like an utterly objective, impersonal thinker who's just looking for the proper credential for the church, and then he signs on, whereas Kierkegaard is just existing as a Christian and constituting with those who exist that way the Christian church. This leaves out the enormous literary productivity and reflection that Kierkegaard devoted to the issue of Christianity. So if there is something to that contrast that Swinson draws between Kierkegaard and Newman, we probably will come to see more qualifications necessary for it as I proceed. Among the things that they shared was the distaste for the established church. Newman, of course, began as an evangelical, but within the Anglican Church. He was ordained a priest in the Anglican Church, and he eventually became a Roman Catholic. But one of the things that bothered him as an Anglican was the fact that decisions about church government were made by the British Parliament, many of whose members who voted on these matters were not Christians, certainly not members of the Anglican Church. So the politicization of Christianity in England was one of the aspects of Newman's growing discontent with the church of his origin. In much the same way, Kierkegaard in Denmark, where it was the Lutheran Church that was established, became a severe critic of this kind of civil service understanding of the life of the clergy. Newman eventually left the Anglican Church, as I say, and joined the Roman Catholic Church, having failed to see the Anglican Church as simply a version of the Catholic Church. That was one of the drives of the Oxford movement, as we'll be seeing when we turn to Newman. Kierkegaard, although he did not take orders in the Danish Lutheran Church, studied as a theologian, and in his youth dreamt, as I will point out, of having a small country parish and living in seclusion. This seems to be a recurring clerical dream. Priests or ministers who are too busy think of some little country parish where all the parishioners will be very much devoted to them, and they will be able to live out their lives in serenity and piety.